What's going on, everyone? We are back with another episode. I am so excited for today's episode. I've wanted to make this for the longest time, so let's just roll the intro and get going.
It's McRIB Time.
All right, we're making McRibs at home. If you haven't seen a McRib before, here's what it is.
McRib is all meat, lean pork that's grilled and simmered in a hickory smoke-flavored barbecue sauce, put on a home-style roll with pickles and onions.
This is essentially a couple of components, and we're gonna make them all from scratch. Let's jump in the kitchen and start with our buns. To start making our buns, we start with warm water and a bit of yeast. You can use dry yeast. This is fresh yeast. The exact same process. Crumble this into our water. Pinch of sugar, lightly whisk to combine. We'll set this aside at room temperature for 10 minutes. Bit of all-purpose flour. A little bit of white sugar. And a pinch of salt. We'll whisk this lightly to combine. And I'll set up my stand mixer. So I'm going to use the dough hooks and knead our bread this way. We'll start the mixer on low speed. And then slowly add our yeast and water mixture. Turn the speed up just a little bit to medium-low and mix for 3 to 4 minutes. After about 3 minutes, we're going to start adding butter in 1 tablespoon at a time. Once all the butter is incorporated, we're going to set this aside. Lightly flour a cutting board in my hand. And dump our dough onto our cutting board. We're going to form this into a tight ball. Lightly grease a large bowl. Cover this with plastic wrap. We'll set this aside for an hour to an hour and a half. So after about an hour and a half or so, this will have doubled in size. First, we want to punch the air out of this. And then we'll transfer it to a floured cutting board. Turn this over a few times, and then we'll cut this into 6 pieces. Now that we got our 6 pieces of dough, we're going to form these into our buns. Once it's into the shape that we want it, egg white with milk. Brush that lightly on top. I'm gonna roll this in sesame seeds. Then we'll place this on a parchment-lined baking sheet and repeat with the rest of our dough. Add our last bun here, another baking sheet, flip it around, right on top. We'll let these proof for 30 more minutes. After 30 minutes, let's take off this top sheet. I'm going to score each of the buns with a sharp knife, just cutting down the center. And into a 425 Fahrenheit oven. Our buns are done. So our next step is we have to make our rub for our ribs. Use that rub to make our barbecue sauce. Let's jump in the kitchen and start making it. A little brown sugar to start off with. Some paprika. Some salt. Some ground mustard. Black pepper. Dried oregano. Garlic powder. Onion powder. And ground coriander. Then whisk to combine. I'm gonna set aside a couple of tablespoons to use in the barbecue sauce, but the rest is for my ribs. To start making our barbecue sauce, I'm gonna defrost some of my chicken stock. If you're wondering why my chicken stock's in a cube, check out our 9 kitchen hack videos and you'll see why. Once the cube has defrosted, I'm gonna add about half a cup of ketchup, about a quarter cup of molasses, an onion that was grated on the large holes of a box grater, 2 tablespoons of Worcestershire, however it's pronounced, sauce, tablespoon of mustard, 2 tablespoons of vinegar, a little bit of hot sauce, the 2 tablespoons of the spice rub that we saved. Whisk this all together and bring it up to a simmer. Once this starts to simmer, we'll lower the heat and let it reduce for about 15 minutes. After about 15 minutes of simmering, this will have reduced by about 1/3 or so. Be careful not to reduce it too much. It will thicken as it cools down. A good check is that it coats the back of a spoon. Let's give this a taste. Yeah, perfect. Let's set this aside. Pickles are one of the easiest things you can make at home. All you have to do is make a brine, chop up some cucumbers. So let's jump in and show you how to make a quick pickle. Make the brine here, so a bit of vinegar, the same amount of water, about a cup of each, tablespoon of salt, and then I have 4 flavorings here. I've got a bit of black pepper, a bit of mustard seed, some sliced garlic, and some fresh dill. And we'll bring this to a simmer until our salt is dissolved. All right, this is just about simmering. Let's take this over to our cucumbers. So we've got our sliced cucumbers here in this bowl. Just gonna add the brine over top of our cucumbers. A bit of paper towel over top to make sure the cucumbers stay submerged. And we'll set this aside for about 30 minutes. It's time for the star of the show. Let's make some ribs. So I have a rack of ribs here, but there is a membrane on the back of this that we need to get rid of first of all. Once the membrane's off, I'm going to cut this down into smaller pieces, 5 or 6 ribs per rack. Season our ribs all over with our spice mixture. On both sides. Some aluminum foil, place our ribs down. Splash of sherry vinegar. And another piece of tin foil on top. Into the oven for 3 hours. So our ribs have been going for about 3 hours. We're going to give them a check and see how they're doing. So these look pretty good. I'm going to coat these in barbecue sauce and then put it under the broiler for a few minutes. These are ready to go under the broiler for 3 to 5 minutes. So after about 5 minutes, our ribs are done. We're gonna let these cool down until we can take out the bones. They're cool enough to handle now. We're gonna take the bones out. These should come out really easily. All right, so we've got our ribs here and then our bones here. I've seen some videos where they just put this on a sandwich, but I don't think that's what a McRib is. So I'm gonna put these in the fridge and we're gonna cool them down a bit and we're gonna combine that with some pork shoulder to make some patties. Last but not least, all we need to do is form some patties. We're gonna use the ribs that we made and combine that with some pork shoulder, throw it in a food processor, and then grill everything up. Add a bit of my rib and a few pieces of pork shoulder. And after a few pulses, if something that looks like this, it's okay that there are bigger pieces here. We don't want it too fine. Let's do the rest. We're almost there. Our last step is to form patties with our meat. I'm gonna use this baking tray. So just push it out into the corners. Once everything's set here, I'm gonna use another piece of parchment paper just to make everything nice and compact. So take out my patty and head to the stove. So my grill pan has been preheating for about 10 minutes or so. Got one of my buns with a bit of butter. I'm just gonna toast this first. So my bun's looking nice and toasted. Let's take that off. Sprinkle with a bit of our spice mixture. Let's wait for this to cook. This looks about done. Let's plate it up. Finish this off with a little bit more barbecue sauce. A few slices of our homemade pickles. And some white onion. And this is ready to eat. Let's give this a try. It's massive. That's really, really good. Everything from scratch. Really delicious. Hope you enjoyed this episode. See you next time.